yes, I do believe that this next portion of the presentation will complement what you've shared very nicely. And it will extend a little bit more into the COVID era. In preparation for the workshop, I reached out to our North Country school counselors and also pulled some information from our fall 21 admissions applications to kind of give you the latest, finger on the pulse, if you will, as to what's happening out there and what we might expect students to be bringing to campus in the fall. So in terms of the feedback from the school counselors, I think that the overarching themes are really best captured in this next slide, which is a response from a colleague at Peru High School. And this colleague talks about the disappointment, loss, and fatigue that students have experienced in their last year and a half of high school, and the fact that they've missed out on a lot of the fun aspects of high school. And that they really are looking forward to the college experience. He mentions that relationship building will be more crucial this year than perhaps ever before, and also says that while high schools have attempted to maintain rigor, students may not have the same levels of academic preparedness as usual due to the part-time and interrupted academics that they've experienced in their last year and a half of high school. In terms of challenges, I was able to kind of draw out a short list here of the things that the counselors shared in terms of the challenges that they expect that the students will face in the fall and to some extent are facing now. One will be transitioning back to face-to-face. The majority of them have either been fully remote or hybrid with very limited face-to-face instruction. And they're going to need some help adjusting back into a fully or mostly face-to-face learning environment. I mentioned the academic preparedness already, but given the many disruptions to secondary education, it's likely that the students will be less prepared for college level work. Motivation was something that was mentioned many times by the counselors. They said that students are finding it difficult now to stay motivated. And it may result in fewer of them showing up this fall, or for those who do show up, finding it difficult to stay on track, especially if COVID continues to intervene with their education. Mental health has already been mentioned. It should come as no surprise that nearly all of the counselors mentioned mental health, especially anxiety and depression, as issues that our first-year students will face this fall. They talked about engagement, and this really relates back to the transition to face-to-face. Because these students will be coming out of remote instruction and have not been engaged in a traditional classroom, it may take some time for them to participate at the levels that we may have expected from them previously. And they may need some very specific instructions on how to go about engaging in the classroom. And then lastly, at least one of the counselors mentioned homesickness. And this touches back on something that Elizabeth mentioned, that they have been spending a lot more time at home, many of them building closer relationships with their family members. And so homesickness may be even more of an issue for them this fall as they adjust to life on campus. The counselors also spoke about many positives, so I wanted to highlight those aspects as well. The North Country counselors who responded talked about this year's seniors being very excited about college, ready to move on, seeing this as the opportunity to finally get things back to normal. That may have some positives and some negatives because it may be a challenge for us to deliver normal to them. So they may have some unmet expectations in the fall, but they're very excited in seeing college as the way to kind of get out of this COVID malaise that they've been in. We know that they were very tech savvy going into the pandemic, but they're even more so now, particularly when it comes to online learning. So that was a positive that was mentioned by the counselors. And the counselors also talked about how the pandemic has forced these students to become more independent, which is an attribute that should be a benefit in their first year of college. And then lastly, they talked about the fact that many of the experiences that the students have had related to the pandemic and social justice movement and all the awareness that has happened in this last year have made these students more compassionate. Many of the counselors spoke to that, an increased level of compassion amongst this year's seniors. The counselors shared many suggestions for you all and for us as a college. They talked about the need for us to offer face-to-face as much as possible and to facilitate peer-to-peer interaction as much as we possibly can. They said that there will be a need for us to facilitate relationship building because that's something that these students have kind of fallen out of the habit of doing, whether that be faculty to student relationship building or peer-to-peer. They emphasize the need to help these students re-socialize and reteach how to participate in face-to-face classes, and also reteach how to balance school and social, because they haven't had that social aspect of things. And so when that becomes available to them again, managing that. The focus on social and emotional needs was mentioned by the counselor. And they did comment as well that if social opportunities will continue to be limited, that we should try to fill that gap in the classroom. In the next section of the presentation, I want to switch the focus a little bit to what we've heard directly from students. So on the Common Application this year, there was a prompt that was added, which you can read on this slide here, about disruptions related to COVID-19. And many of our students, about 1,000 of them, took the opportunity to respond with some narrative. And so we reviewed that, and I wanted to share with you some of what the students said and what that might mean for their arrival this fall. So this next slide is kind of a fun one. This is actually a word cloud that's taken from, we took all the text that was written in response to that prompt on the Common Application and dropped it into this word cloud tool. And so you can see the most frequently utilized words there. So obviously words like COVID and virus and quarantine jump right out, but also many words related to education, school, learning, online, and grades. Yeah, COVID is on there more than once because they use different phrases for COVID. So yeah, sometimes it was COVID-19, sometimes it was just COVID. Sometimes they were all caps and sometimes not. So the tool isn't smart enough to combine those, so you'll find it in there more than once. But you also see there's a focus on loved ones in here. High frequency of words like family, home, friends, parents, lots of references to time, years, months, days, as well as words that capture the struggles that students have experienced, like hard and difficult and affected and impacted. On this next slide, I tried to highlight for you in two different categories what I thought were sort of the key takeaways of what students wrote in their Common Application in terms of the impact that COVID has had. So on the one side there, you see academics, and on the other, personal. And so for academics, obviously a lot of distractions, lack of structure, a lot of switching of modalities was very disruptive to the students, changing of grade systems. All the things that we were doing here were also happening in their high schools. Many of the students talked about unstable Wi-Fi, internet technology, no access to libraries or study spaces that they had relied on previously, canceled standardized tests like the SAT and ACT, and the inability to visit colleges. On the personal side, many stories of loss of loved ones, illnesses, loss of family income, lack of socialization, milestone events canceled, worry for loved ones, loneliness, the need to take on new responsibilities at home, and caring for sick family members. What I want to touch upon next is some quotes that were taken directly from what the students wrote to us that I think really highlight the disparate experiences of COVID. So Martin Luther King spoke of two Americas, and I'm sure that you see that in the classroom, students coming from at least two, if not more, very different backgrounds and experiences. And you can see how that really comes through in how students experience the pandemic. And I'm sure that you'll be seeing that if you're not already seeing it in classrooms. So here is kind of on the one end of the spectrum where students are commenting, on the loss of social experiences, the loss of the dance season, of the golf season, loss of senior trips and proms and homecoming dances and all of those sorts of things. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we see quotes like, "My family has always known struggle, but COVID taught us the humiliation of true poverty." We see students talking about losing access to public spaces that they needed to get their work done because, their home spaces are so small and so congested, and they don't have access to Wi-Fi and resources that they need there for their education. The students are talking about things like very unstable living conditions, the need to be moving several times during the pandemic, and the need to be stepping in and taking care of younger sisters or brothers and cousins and helping out with cleaning and other household responsibilities, because parents have fallen ill or lost jobs or other things that have affected their life at home. So, we're seeing on the one hand, applicants reflecting on the loss of social and extracurricular experiences. And then on the other hand, some of our students just simply being in survival mode. And I know that you're aware of these disparate experiences in our students, but I think this year in your first year seminars, you may find that divide has widened, and that emotions that are connected to the experiences of the pandemic and social justice issues will be very raw in students, and they may not have had the opportunity to appropriately process those things before they arrive on campus. So I think it will be important to acknowledge the wide range of experiences that our students will arrive with, and to create a brave or safe space for exploration. And unfortunately, something else I wanted to mention is that it's possible that we will be seeing fewer historically disadvantaged students enrolling this fall. Nationally and statewide, there's a trend of lower college application rates among first generation and low income students, which is thought to be related to the pandemic. So in New York State right now, throughout the SUNY system, that's translating into, we're seeing currently 40% declines in applications for our educational opportunity program, and similar declines from students coming from metropolitan New York City area. So we've been in conversations with our colleagues in New York City. We actually just had a meeting yesterday with some colleagues from New York City Department of Education. They're hopeful that, things are just happening a little bit later, and that we still will be able to enroll these students who so desperately do need to continue their education. But it is possible that, we will see students slipping through the cracks. And, that is at least in part related to the pandemic and the lack of access that many students have had to their teachers and their school counselors and others who would normally assist them with the college application and enrollment process. So lastly, I want to end on a positive note. I'm sorry, this has gotten a little bit heavy, but there are some positives that students shared. They talked about in their applications, they reflected on the personal growth and development that they've experienced over the last year. They talked about things like increased resilience, a newfound sense of independence, a sense of pride in being able to help their families by caring for younger siblings and cousins, a feeling of having a sense of purpose by taking on new responsibilities in the home or through employment, a sense of accomplishment in learning new skills. One student mentioned that they had taught themselves through YouTube videos to edit video and audio, Another student had taught themselves how to play the guitar. Many students mentioned baking. A lot of the students wrote about feeling closer to their families, and developing new coping mechanisms for dealing with disappointment. So I think that these are all positives that have come out of this experience that students have had, in what amounts to probably about half of their junior year of high school and their whole senior year. And so I think that we can look forward to those positives in the first year seminar courses this fall. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. Wendy, I know you wanted to also allow us to have some discussions in breakout rooms.
Yes, I use Zoom in my daily work. I'm doing it so well right now. Before we go into the breakout sessions, I wanted to do a couple things. And one is, I know a number of us have close relationships with students that are in this age group, but I wondered if any of the parents or employers of babysitters or people that know kids in this age group had any observations that they would like to share from a slightly different perspective. You can either unmute and shout out or raise your hand, whatever makes you happy.
Hi, it's Laura Jean. I have 3 boys in college. Yes, that is correct. 3 boys in college. They're all, 2 of them are very motivated and do fine with whatever format it is. But my youngest son has trouble with anything asynchronous. That is just a little too distant for him. And he really does like his in-person classes best. He only has 1 in-person class this semester, but he really feels that is a motivating factor, and he learns better. He says he learns better when he's in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy?
So I recognized a lot in what Carrie provided from especially from the North Country group that she's been talking to, the counselor at Peru. I think actually that list of personal and academic was almost identical to like my daily life. And it's primarily my daughter, who is 17, who's planning to go to college, maybe. And, she has groups of friends that are her age, and then a group that, of course, is 1 year older. And I would say the 1 year older students sound like your typical Gen Z students, but I think we're going to see a real disruption in that they're going to be so different, this group coming in, than even the year before them and perhaps the year after them. Her group was especially very type A. I mean, most of the time I was worried that these friends of hers were not sleeping because they were taking 6 or 7, extracurriculars and AP classes and all of that, and they were just kind of going overboard. But what I've seen, and I think what parents are going to be concerned about, is their identity at this age is so tied up with that experience of high school and what they're doing in high school and how that's helping them plan for their future, and not having some of those daily experiences and stuff that takes them out of the household, whether that's a job or in sports or something. Not having that has really destabilized their identity, and it's kind of made them skip a kind of a stage of adolescence in ways. So I think this recommendation of they're going to need help getting back into the groove of being around people in kind of normal ways again. So anything that we can do in the classroom, and I think parents are going to appreciate this, to kind of help them develop a community, and we always say that, but now it really, really is important. That isn't just about an academic community, but finding kind of a new home where even though they've had different experiences of COVID in the last year and a half, they've all lost their lifestyle. They've all lost something, and that trying to use that as a kind of positive to help them grow. You know, we've used the idea of resilience and grit a lot. I think we kind of have to shift that, because they may hit us if we tell them they need to have grit, because they're like, I have grit. I've been through shit now. So, you know, they are much more independent even than they were maybe a year ago. And we don't have any kind of, we have not gone through similar experiences that they have gone through. And so we're really going to have to open our ears to listen to that and navigate them as best as we can and facilitate growth that's going to look different than anything we've had to deal with before. And I think I'm seeing that in some of my students. I've definitely seen it in the high school group that I know. And I'm constantly thinking about what I'm going to do about it as an instructor when they get here. It's going to have to be very different. I'm going to have to scale back on a lot of my expectations and change those expectations to giving them tools to adjust, which we always do, but these are going to be different tools, I think.
Thank you. John, was that a hand or applause? Okay.
Applause.
Okay. They need a finger snapping. That would be less confusing. Other comments? Michelle, please.
So forgive my mask. I'm over in Harrington. Hello. So, you know, everything that's been said is right on, but I do believe that, you know, so I have a kid who once was motivated and is not motivated. And I think that we're going to see on all levels. I mean, there are going to be a handful who have always been motivated and are going to stay motivated. Those drive themselves who just keep going. But the one big thing that I think I'm discovering about this age group is the heart. And I believe that if we can access that heart, we can do amazing things here. Because I think there is a depth of compassion and, you know, that's sort of what you said about the purpose and the sense. And I think if we can foster that, that's going to be a secret to success with them. And I think, too, that, you know, you have to have standards, but I think the way you present those standards is really going to matter. You know, are you talking about the amazingness that you see in them, that you could see looming if they step up? Or are you saying, you know, not cutting it? That's it. You know, I don't think they're going to respond as well to the really hard language or harsh treatment. I think they're hurting too much inside. And anything that is soothing to them, and just knowing that you care and that you're rooting for them is going to make a huge amount of difference.
Thank you, Michelle. Margarita, and then Elaine.
I just wanted to say that through my classes, and also because of a couple of activities that have to do with a lot of North Country kids, I would recommend that the politics don't come to the classroom, because I had 3 students last semester who decided not to be enrolled this semester because they felt that we had targeted the North Country people as conservatives, and that if anybody said anything to try to find what we share, that they would be isolated. And also because apparently some of them, and apparently this went through the right process, submitted work that was not supporting progressive views, and that they got a fail grade. And in my honors class right now, the North Country students, they are saying that they don't feel safe expressing their views because they think that we have one view on campus, and I was absolutely horrified about these things. But I mean, thankfully, we are past the election and all the other things, but I just would recommend that because we unwillingly, we may be isolating kids, because even if they want to be progressive or they want to belong to whatever they think the campus represents, their families don't, and they don't think their families are bad people, etc., etc. So I just wanted to make this comment because, I mean, it's pretty heartbreaking to think that they are not coming back to college because the political environment has made them feel foreigners. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Elaine, go ahead.
Yes, I don't want to add too much, but one thing that really struck me, this has been really interesting, is the extremes here. Because on one hand, I'm hearing that the kids are kind of dependent and need help getting up to their developmental skills, milestones and such. And on the other hand, there's clearly students who've had to grow up a lot faster in the last year. So how I'm going to deal with those two different kind of cohorts of super independence and kind of more dependence than perhaps earlier generations had, I don't have an answer for it, but I think it's going to be really challenging. Yeah, I'm trying to think how to express emails to tell students what they have to do without using the word have to or must. It never occurred to me that might be triggering in any way. Yeah, it's going to be a real challenge. So thank you already for bringing this all up.
Yeah. Thank you, Elaine, partly because that gives a lovely segue to get into some breakout rooms. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm going to begin here with one question that came up in our breakout group was, does anybody know, especially our presenters, what's happening in orientation in terms of community building activities that could be built on by the CFS instructors? Carrie or Elizabeth, do you have any idea? Is everybody muted? I've muted everybody.
Yes, and I unmuted, but somehow I got muted again, but
Okay.
I'm muted now. I know one thing, okay, that the orientation planning team, which consists of Corey Jackson, Allison Swick-Dotney, and Jake Avery, put together a proposal for, because of COVID, we kind of have to have a plan A and a plan B here. And so they put in for virtual orientation at the end of June. But if all is safe enough to do so, to have some smaller groups, face-to-face orientations in the month of July, and potentially one more in August to catch some of the late deposits and others who couldn't make it. And the focus of this, it has nothing to do with class selection or computer labs or banner. It is all on relationship building, because that's what they need most and that's what they want most out of a summer orientation program. So there will be team building and peer contact, more so if it's face-to-face, obviously. But even when it isn't, there are orientation leaders who are top-notch who engage them virtually as well. That's what I know.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have questions or ideas or burning concerns that arose out of the breakout sessions?
It's not really a concern, but I was just going to say in the chat, I put my old CTE hotshot list of 10 things to do with a gen ed class. So,
nice.
10 ideas of something you can do.
This
That's
isn't,
great.
I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead, Elizabeth.
The overtalker in class. I realized that I answered your question, but I didn't answer the most important part that the asker might have asked. And that is, how can we build on it as a CFS 1889 community? I want to say that in the virtual orientation sessions, maybe the face-to-face, I'm not sure, but there was the idea, Allison came to me proposing that there be this year an academic panel, as well as there's usually a safety panel and an involvement panel. And it would be fantastic if faculty from, not me and the registrar and all that, to have really engaging faculty, potentially those who wish to from CFS community. And that's part, it's not a time of selling CFS, it's a time of what do you want the students and families, it's families, to know about academics. So that's a possibility to get, to get the ball rolling there too.
Excellent. Any other points?
Isn't that similar to what they have been doing in the summers for orientation, Elizabeth? No?
Nope.
I thought they were having parents, like meetings with the parents, and then we had sessions with the students had with faculty as well, but they haven't, or?
Not that, we haven't had a panel of faculty.
I see, okay.
But now I think there is it was honestly difficult to get faculty to participate. But now there's, I think, a newer interest and a wider interest in participation with students. It's so important. It's like this is where we get to tell them early, not the list of expectations of them, but inspire them to want to be academic a month and a half later.
Nice. All right, we have reached my second planned stopping point, which was if we didn't finish by 3 o'clock, we would finish by 3:15. I want to give you those extra 15 minutes of your day to grade something or something. I really, excuse me, I really appreciate the level of participation that we have had here, that you all have turned out. Next month, March 19th at noon, so different than this, it'll be March 19th at noon, Jessamine Newhouse from the Center for Teaching Excellence is going to, the subject is syllabus development, but what we're really talking about is how to take these SLOs and design some assignments that are going to help students in achieving those SLOs. And then obviously the assignments go into our syllabus. So I really hope that you all will be able to join us for that. Bring your friends who were not able to be here. This will be recorded and put up on the CFS Moodle page, and that will get sent out to all the faculty. So I know that this is focused on the CFS. It seems like such important information for all of our students and all of our faculty that I hope to get as many people as possible, at least to watch the first 30 or 40 minutes that were so really very helpful. So thank you very much, Elizabeth and Carrie, and all of you for coming. This has been great. I'll see you next month.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. This is the awkward part where we're all walking away.